Hello again, folks. It's Mr. Pete here in Studio G, and this is tips number 1000, a milestone video. So I've made 1000 videos in my Machine Shop Tips series, plus there's 600 or 800 other videos floating out there as well. So welcome to my channel, welcome to my studio, and I'm sitting here before the beautiful little Atlas 618 lathe, and I've done 6 or 7 videos on this already, and I'll show you a list of those here in just a moment. But this is going to be maybe the last video in this series of 7 or 8, and it's entitled Inspecting and Testing the Atlas 618 lathe. So let's begin. Be sure and watch all 7 videos in the playlist of the Atlas Craftsman Model 18 lathe. Well, finally the machine is about ready to actually use, and we will make some chips here and a few test cuts, but I wanted a chip pan, so I used an old TV tray, but is that ugly enough? I remember my family eating off of these Swanson TV dinners in 1959. Well, that's no good. So I painted one brown like Mary Tyler Moore's 49 Hudson. That doesn't look too bad, and that'll do an admirable job of catching the chips. You know, and it's just the right size, isn't that something? In the previous video, tips 999, I completely disassembled and cleaned up and then reassembled this little scroll chuck here on the Atlas lathe. So I'm taking a piece of ground stock, 1/2 inch diameter, and we'll just check to see how accurate, or should I say inaccurate, this chuck is. So put it in the jaws like that, snug her down nicely, and we'll put an indicator on it. Well, what kind of indicator is going to work on this little machine? On a small lathe like this, there's very little room to set up a dial indicator, and this is the smallest holder that I have. And I did try some other indicators, but this seemed to work okay, even though I've got it mounted a little bit outboard here, but it's going to work. So let me zoom in and we'll see how inaccurate or accurate this chuck actually is. And it won't be spot on, I guarantee it. They never are, even when they're brand new. Okay, you see the setup. Now let me zoom in and we'll see how far off it is. I've already zeroed out the dial indicator, and I'll go 1 revolution. Look at that. Wow, it's about 6 thousandths, 5.5 or 6 thousandths off. I fully expected 2 or 3. And really there's no way to fix this, so a fella just compensates for this by doing work that does not need to be spot on. And that's most cases. It doesn't really matter, depending on what you're doing, but a lot of times it doesn't matter. If you want it more accurate than that, then a fella would, or a gal, would use a 4-jaw chuck, and you can get it right on, and we won't get into that. But now I know that this chuck is not accurate, and in my mind when I work on the machine, I will take that into consideration. Now the next thing I'd like to check is the tailstock offset, or is this center in alignment with the headstock center. So in order to do that, I'm going to first of all clean out the spindle. It has to be immaculate before I put the center in, and I like to do that with a piece of shop rag like that. And notice that I'm turning it to clean it thoroughly. And remember that a month ago I did clean this out with a Morse taper reamer, as I did the tailstock, and that's already been done here. So I have a center mounted in there, and that's a number 1 Morse taper, but in the headstock we use a number 2 Morse taper. So always clean everything thoroughly, because if there's a chip in there, we will not get an accurate reading. Now will we? I'm going to use the Edge Technology tailstock alignment bar. You've seen me use this in older videos. I used to have a relationship with this company. They make great products. Maybe I still do, I don't know, but I have used this several times. This lathe is so small that, believe me, it will barely fit between centers. And as always, examine the centers to make sure that they are not buggered up, or you'll get a false reading. And are the center holes clean? Yes, I've examined them. So one end goes into the headstock, and then I'll bring the tailstock in, and I've got this locked. Now I have a reason for having this much quill sticking out. And it does spin. Remember, I will not turn the machine on for this. This is a static test. And these two indicators that I showed you a minute ago, I have tried these to see if I could use them for this test, and I cannot. And what I finally came up with is using the last word indicator on the Mighty Mag. It has to be very compact to go from one end to the other. Please note that the tip of the indicator is placed on center. So what we do here is take an indicator reading on the ring up here, the metal ring on each end. We will not put the indicator on the red part, that's just a carrier. And the reading should be the same on this end as it is on this end, and it probably will not be. But the adjustment can be made on the tailstock with the two little screws here. So we'll see if we can do that, but let's see what the initial reading is right now. Okay, I'm going to bring the tip of the indicator up into contact with the test bar. I'm turning the cross slide in. Now watch the indicator. I will bring it in until it's 0, so the needle is pointing toward me. And it's right on, or I might, yeah, it's right on. Now I will move the whole carriage down to the far end, and we'll see what the reading is down there. And I'll approach that ring slowly. Okay, and I'm 3/1000ths off, but in a distance of 12 inches, that is really very, very good, but I think I'll try to get it a little closer than that. I know you can't see the face of the indicator, but the way that I will do that is, first of all, we have to unlock the tailstock clamp, and then using a screwdriver, there's a set screw on each side here, and you can see this one. But let me turn the other one just a little bit and see if I can get it. I might have to back this one off because we're working one screw against the other. There's a little bit of trial and error here, but now I will turn in on this side a little bit. I don't know, I know you can't see the needle, but I'm bringing it back to 0, and then I'm going to tighten the other one against it so that it can't move. I'm having a heck of a time seeing the slots back here. I think I got it. Now I need to lock this and make sure we got pressure here against the test bar, and it's on 0 right now, and I'll move it down to the other end off camera. And wow, it's right on 0 there, and it was on 0 at the other end. I know you don't believe me, but there it is on 0, so I have basically perfect tailstock alignment over a distance of 12 inches. So that's really amazing, Grace. Get yourself one of these alignment bars. They're really quite amazing. To remove the dead center from the headstock, just use a rod, knock it out like that, and put the chuck back on. I've already oiled it, and I know that to be clean. I know the thread to be clean. Never assemble a chuck onto a spindle unless it is absolutely immaculate. In a minute here, I'm going to take a test cut on this 1/2-inch aluminum, but I discovered several things here in preparation for this video as far as setting the tool up is concerned. Remember that this is a homemade compound, and I was wondering why someone had reduced the height right here. And there's a reason for that, because it's very difficult to get the tool low enough so it is on center, because it's just too high. Now there are two different tool posts here, and this is the better one to use, but now I know why there was two of them and why there are two rockers here. But putting the tool post on there and then the rocker Now these are small tool holders, and I talked about that in the other video. But the problem I'm having here is that in order to get it on center, and I should have left the center in there, but notice how far back I have to move it in order to get it on center. Whereas I would like it to be more like that. Well, there are two tool holders. And I found out that even though I thought they were identical, they look identical, don't they? But one holds the tool at a different angle than the other. See how differently they're built when you look at the bottom? And they are not the same manufacturer. I thought that they were, but they aren't the same. But this one, with the shallower angle, presents the tool a little bit lower. So that's why I'm using that. But when I took everything apart to examine it, in video 1, I was wondering why someone had milled off the bottom of this tool, this cutoff tool. And the reason is, obviously, they could not get it low enough without machining it. And I am considering machining about an 1/8 inch off the bottom of this, but I have been able to make it work, but barely, with this tool holder. So you can see it's a bit of a struggle. So I swung the tool holder around so I can use the tailstock center to check my height. And I'm right on, but again, look at the rocker, how far set back that is. But now I can loosen this and swing it around without changing the height. Also, I forgot to tell you, there were 2 tool post rings, and one is thicker than this. And I had to use the thinner one, otherwise it raises the tool up about another 1/16 of an inch. Another great way of checking the height of the tool is to use your 6-inch scale, and I've caught it between the tool and the work, and notice that it is not perfectly vertical. It's leaning a little bit this way, which means I'm below center. So I'll struggle just a little bit with that and get it right on center, and then at that point the steel rule will be perfectly vertical. Okay, whether you can tell or not, the steel rule is perfectly vertical. And now a very simple operation. I'll just face off the end of the 1/2 inch round aluminum. That also will help you determine if you're truly on center, depending on how big a little tip you leave on there. And now I'll take about a 20/1000th cut, and I'm going to use power feed. There's my hands. That's power feed, and it's working great. Wow, that cut very nicely. Of course, it's a brand new tool that I just sharpened. It's a right-hand turning tool, and remember, it's only a 3/16 square tool bit. You may have noticed quite a bit of vibration and bouncing around and noisiness, and I believe it's all due to these old hardened belts that have taken a set, causes vibration. I'm not going to worry about it because I don't intend to own this machine very long. Next, I install a piece of 1-inch aluminum in the chuck, and large stock like this doesn't go back very far. Remember, it's a 1/2 inch hole in the spindle. Now, since I'm facing, I have locked the carriage right here, and I'll just take a light facing cut, enough to take the saw marks off. Okay, that worked absolutely great. Always remembering the limitations of a small machine like this. I'm used to larger machines, but now after using my Unimat, this seems fairly big, but in fact, I guess you would call it a medium-sized lathe. And I know what you're thinking. You're just machining aluminum. You could do that with your front teeth. Well, this is a piece of 7/16 steel that I've mounted now, and I'll face that off and put just a little bit of a step on it and see how that works. Well, that worked great. Didn't cut as easy, of course, as the aluminum. And I will have to take lighter cuts. That was kind of a heavy cut, really, for the first time that I tried to actually cut steel. One other thing I wanted to mention, you may recall that when I bought the machine, this was the chuck, and it was much rustier. This has been in rust remover. And the number one, this is a number one Morse taper, was all buggered up. And I think I either lost it or threw it away, and no loss. This is a 1/2-inch chuck. And then I had this one. This is a 3/8 chuck with a number one shank, but it's all buggered up. Not only that, but I did a test on this, but I don't remember where this came from, but someone actually welded this shank onto this this chuck, and it's just a terrible job. Well, it's a good job of welding, but it is so far off. I actually indicated it. I really need to throw that away, but I had in stock this Albrecht chuck. Now it's only a 1/4 inch maximum size, but it already had a number one Morse taper on it, and of course it's keyless, and that's a $300 chuck. So that is probably the chuck that I will be using, because most of the drilling is going to be done with small drills on a small lathe. But if I need larger drills, what I really need to do is order some shanks, some arbors that are number ones that will fit some of these other chucks. Because I probably got a dozen chucks downstairs, but none of them will fit this machine. Well, that concludes Machine Shop Tips number 1000. I hope you got something out of it. I had a lot of fun playing around with this lathe, and this is the last video in this series. Now, I'll be using the machine from time to time for other jobs, but that concludes the series on cleaning up, restoring, and actually testing and using the Atlas 618 lathe, which is identical to the Sears Craftsman 618 lathe. Hope you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you're in the mood. And check out my 16 to 1800 other videos. This is Mr. Pete saying so long for now. Leave a comment if you would. Even if it's just a smiley face or something foolish like that. See you next time. And yes, I am selling things more than ever as I clear the garage out. And I'm taking all of the items that I'm going to show you right now to the Pontiac Thresherman's Fair. They have a swap meet down there. So I've got at least 20 packages here of tractor manuals and other materials related to a steam fair. And my little antique drill press is going, as is my wonderful Wisconsin engine. I hate giving this thing up. It runs great, but it's got to go. And over here we got my fire axe, a bunch of clamps, every last tool that I have that is related to small engine work. Pins and shackles and hardware. There's a beautiful little Power Products engine, a Yale hoist, 1.5 ton. I've had it for 30 years. Haven't used it in at least 5. And over here, more of my precious engines, how I love those little Jacobson engines. I cut my teeth on those. When I worked at the hardware store, I was indeed the Jacobson repairman. There's a very rare Rio engine, and also 2 boxes of my precious magnetos. It's really hard to give this stuff up, but it's gotta go.